Hi everyone, today I want to talk about the Moravians and their contributions to the Revolutionary War. And I feel like the best way to do that is to start at the beginning of the Moravian Church back in Europe, talk about their early formings, since this is very pivotal to how they acted during the Revolution. So, since 1457, they have officially been known as the Unity of the Brethren, which had and they had the origins in ancient Bohemia and Moravia, which is now present day Czech Republic. They Their first leader that they rallied around was a man by the name of John Hus. He led a Protestant movement against the many practices of the Roman Catholic clergy and hierarchy. Eventually, he was accused of heresy and underwent a long trial at the Council of Constance and was burned at the stake on July 6, 1415. Now, like any other Protestant religion that went against the Catholic Church, the Moravians were persecuted for a while in Europe. And so they found a new primary leader in Bishop John Amos Comenius. But by the 1700s, the church ended up seeing renewal under Count Nicholas Ludwig von Zinzendorf. He was a nobleman in Saxony, and he encouraged the Moravians to pursue the task of being missionaries, which was their original task. So that's one interesting thing about the Moravian Church is how focused they are on missions. They take the command of the Sermon on the Mount very seriously. And so, because he encouraged the Moravians to pursue this, the first Moravians were sent out in 1732, and they were sent to the West Indies. Now, Moravians came to America in 1735. They originally went to Georgia, but unfortunately, that settlement failed, and so they then turned their attention to a settlement in Pennsylvania, which is interesting considering that Quakers also were in Pennsylvania, and they also shared the view or the belief of pacifism. After Pennsylvania, they eventually founded settlements in North Carolina, including the Salem settlement, which is now called Winston-Salem. The Moravians were a very devout and peace-loving people, and of course this spilled over into their involvement in the Revolutionary War. Their main concern above anything else was missions. They did missions all over the world. They went out and missioned or spread the gospel to the Native Americans, which was, of course, disrupted during the Revolutionary War. But this was their primary concern. The war, or the trials of the trivial pursuits of men, one could say, was not. So this led them to sit on the fence more during the Revolutionary War, which, of course, as we know, did not sit well with the British or the Continentals. Because of this, because of their approach of pacifism during the war, they were harassed by both the British and the Continentals. As observed with those in the backcountry, again, neither side liked when one simply sat on the fence or took the stance of nothing. They were fined and even attacked physically. Some young men even went to lengths to hide in the forest to escape being pressed into service. There were a few that did join. Again, just like some Quakers, many Quakers did not believe in participating in the war because they were pacifists, but some Quakers still participated, even though that was very frowned upon. I'm not familiar with how the Quakers reacted to those who went off into service, but the Moravians forgave those who did and allowed them back into the church. However, they still had opinions over the war, and they still had their opinion about who they wanted to win. But at the end of the day, once the war was over, they viewed the American victory as providential, and they celebrated the peace that came with that. And this came in the form of the first celebration of July 4th. However, it's very different from how we celebrate it today. Instead of fireworks and glorifying the military acts that were done by the founding fathers and the Continental soldiers. The Moravians took a much more solemn approach, and it was very much focused on praising God and not praising the country, the newly found country. During the war, places like Salem were also used as places of healing and helped to contribute to the war. But like I said before, above all, Moravians were concerned with their missions and their devotion to Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. And I think this is important to remember when studying small cases or small segments of society within the revolution, like the Moravians. There are always reasons behind reasons for why they choose not to participate. We saw the level of the tiers of reasons with the settlers in the backcountry as to whether or not they were for the Patriots or for the British Crown. And so, in examining why the Moravians didn't participate in the war, I think is very interesting, and it shows a different aspect of the revolution that sometimes isn't always seen.